I've been in the automotive industry for over 20 years. Oh my God, I'm not going to think about that. And I've seen a few things. And one of those things that I've seen, it doesn't happen that often, 2 words, insurance jobs. And that sounds weird because there's people that work at insurance companies and they have insurance jobs. But there's another kind of insurance job that's not so great, and that is when people are buried in a car or they made a mistake with their car and they use their insurance to get out of it. Say they claim it's stolen and then they go park it downtown with the keys in it, or whatever the scenario would be. Again, I'm not trying to give people ideas. That stuff just happens. Sometimes those cars make it to the auction. And inadvertently, I think I bought one of those. I don't know, it's not for sure, but I bought a 2009 335 sedan. I buy lots of BMW 3 Series, lots of BMWs in general, and those cars have the N54 twin-turbo inline-6. I sell a ton of these engines. It's a common thing I have on the shelf. So another one of those cars with a trunk fire. And, you know, the battery's in the trunk, so you can kind of believe it. It also had a bad engine. And not just a little bad, all the way bad. So what do I mean by all the way bad? Well, I will show you. Of course, I'm all about showing you guys everything. It turns over nice and neat until you get to there. And then it kind of... Nope, that is... I'm not trying to break my engine stand, but hey, if we go backwards, which you're never supposed to do, I don't care because, well, the engine's bad. It goes about 270 degrees, and that's all she wrote. So yeah, it's all the way bad. Even though I've made a video getting a burned up Miata to run, a BMW that had a trunk fire is like a dumpster full of worms compared to a little bitty can of worms that I conquered. So to get this to run really wasn't feasible. There were too many modules burned up. What we did do is we pulled the entire key set, the ignition with the key and the body control, which is the CAS module, and the engine computer, and plugged it into another car I have on the lot, which told me that this car had 95,000 miles on it. Now, had this engine been good, this would be a $2,500 engine. That's expensive. It's not a $2,500 engine. So what we would normally do in a situation where we can't hear a car run is we'll do a compression and leak down, and my inventory guy couldn't get the engine to turn all the way over. And he said, hey, this is a bad motor. What do you want to do? Well, we inventoried the rest of it, and I saved the engine for a teardown, which is why I posted in the community tab not too long ago where I had to cut the flywheel to get the torque converter off. That was this engine. So today we get to tear it down and find out what happened. BMW's N54 B30 came out for the 2007 model year 335. Came out in 2008 in the 5 Series for the 535. It was also used in the 135, the Z4, and the 335 IS. Now, this is not the first N54 I've torn down on the channel. The last one I tore down was a returned engine from another salvage yard. I didn't really know if it was good or bad. We pulled the whole thing apart, and you guys can watch the video. I went into really great detail about all of the small and big problems that these engines can have. In this video, I'm still going to touch base on all those issues, but I know this one is bad. So let's see how bad this actually is. First things first, let's pull the coils out and pull the plugs. Oh, there's no plug in number 4. Well, it appears I'm missing a plug. What likely happened is during the inventory process of this car, once the problem was found, we probably didn't go any further, didn't put the plug back in it, so unfortunately I don't have that to show you. But I do have the remaining 5, which look pretty well used, but not terrible. They're all the right kind of plug. They're all in about the same condition. No clues yet. The next thing I'd like to do is pull the thermostat and the water pump. Now, this is a metal housing aftermarket water pump. It doesn't look like it's the good one. It looks like it's the cheap one. But hey, at least someone replaced it. Let's get the bolts out of it. They didn't tighten the bolts. Oop, sounds like there's fluid in there. Oh no, it's green coolant. Stop that, people. That is not supposed to be green. It's blue. It's not any more expensive either. Alright, thermostat housing's off. Looks like the connector's broken too. Someone had a really good time putting this in. I must admit, putting this in the car, especially on an all-wheel drive car, it's not a great time. I do not recommend. Alright, next, get these bolts out. Holds that to the block. Oh, they didn't even install the upper bolt. Oh no! That's not supposed to be there. This is supposed to be a water pump, not an O-ring pump. There. Next, I'm going to remove this heat shield. These are also the boost control solenoids. It has some incorrect vacuum line. It's supposed to all have this cloth braided stuff. Anything that's not cloth braided, it's not supposed to be here. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means that it's quite literally not supposed to be there. Now, these lines do get hard and brittle. These hoses do, and well, they burst. In fact, I've had to replace them on my own car at least once. It's totally normal though. Just normal. Totally normal. Next, I'll remove this engine mount bracket. Oh, that was tight. That was actually tight. Now we can get a pretty good look at the way the turbos are situated on the engine. Got your oil drains, your oil feeds are back here. Kind of hard to see, that's not that much fun. And then you have your coolant pipes here, right here and here. This all looks really complicated, and on a stand it's super easy. In the car, I don't think super or easy can be applied. But we'll get these off, we'll check these turbos out, see if they're worth reselling. If not, they'll go in the core bin. To get the turbos off, we're just going to start blasting some bolts out of here. I need to get these heat shields loose, all the lines loose. They kind of come off in one complete assembly here. Now let's start getting some of these fittings. Clamp off. It's broken anyway.
Much better.
Oh, I see what's going on here. Well, let's have a look at the exhaust ports. Now remember, cylinder 4 is the question mark. Well, looky there. Well, that sure looks like an entire exhaust valve stem. And if you look at the guide, there's nothing. Will that come out? Let's see. Let me go get some pliers. Let's see. Can I fish this out of here? Oh, it's proving to be more difficult than I thought. Oh, it's hiding back in there. We got to get that out. It could cause some damage. We don't want that. Nope. Let's get a magnet. Let's try that. Oh, maybe it's not magnetic. Oh, yes it is. That's about how I feel right now. So that is a very destroyed exhaust valve stem. Ooh, we're gonna find some malice in that combustion palace. Let's check out these turbos. So This one, right off the bat, has a little more in and out play, in and out shaft play than I really like to see. And don't take it that way. It's not what I meant. So this turbo I wouldn't sell, but aside from that, these turbos are pretty well known for wastegate rattle. However, this is the LCI car, which is like the facelifted car, and they had a different kind of exhaust housing. They were a little bit better, but it still has a lot of play. That's the play we're concerned with. You can kind of adjust this play out of it, but on the earlier cars, they're much worse, and what typically happens is this wastegate flap is at such an incorrect angle, it won't even close all the way, which means that it makes low boost. It throws a 30 FF boost threshold code. It's very common on these cars. This one is the one that had the exhaust valve stem hanging out in it, and I don't think anything went through the turbo itself. It doesn't really have a ton of play. This turbo is in much better condition than the other, although it does still have some play. I don't know that I would sell either of these. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the injectors. These are super expensive Index 11s or 12s. They're 7s, it looks like, which still have some value, but we're going to try to get those out the right way. I actually have a tool this time. Just kind of hang down there, get out of the way. We'll deal with that later. Now we need to remove the brackets that hold down the injectors, and we can pop them injectors out. Now there are two different types of tools for these injectors. These also work on N63s. There's the good type, and then there's the type that I have. This is just a little itty bitty slide hammer. It's all it is. I put a longer bolt in here, get a little more force on it. Sometimes they come right out. The N63s are usually a little bit worse. N54s usually come out pretty easily, but I don't want to say anything too crazy. Yeah, not too bad. It's always the last one, right? Don't want to hit myself in the head with this. I don't know if I can even show this on the channel here. I'm actually going to try to turn this back and forth a little bit, loosen it up. So what I did is I threaded one of the bolts back into the boss for the brackets that hold it down, and I'm using blue here to put a little bit of tension on it, and I'll use one hand to do that and the other hand to try to knock this injector out. That did the trick. So here are the Index 7 fuel injectors. And when I say Index 7, there's a number at the end after the part number. It says 07. That means these are the 7th iteration or 7th revision of these injectors. Now there are 1 through 12, and 11 and 12 are thought to be the best ones. That's what I have in my car. That's what most of the guys that modify their cars want. And if you need a set of them, I have a few sets still in stock. You can email us. I'll leave all the contact information in the description, our website, all that stuff. But I did expect to find some damage in cylinder 4 to the tip, but somehow the injectors came out without any damage. Let's get some more of this harness disconnected here. Oh, we still have a ground down there. Next thing we need to do is pull the rail, and first we're going to pull the feed line for the rail from the high pressure fuel pump. Now we can remove the rail. When I get these plastic things out of the way. One thing I'm often asked is to show the amount of carbon buildup on direct injection engines, and this is pretty bad. I don't think this has ever had a walnut blasting, which is a pretty common thing that gets done to these. I'd say probably every 90 to 100,000 miles, where you pull the intake off, turn the engine in a certain direction, and there's a kit to where the valves are closed and it blasts all this carbon off. It's pretty built up. Definitely affects the way these engines run. Now this is the cylinder that has problems, and you can definitely tell that right or rear intake valve is bent. Pretty gunky looking. Let's peel this valve cover off. I think that's all the bolts. I missed a few. Yeah, it's just going to come right off, right? Oh, I actually did. Fooled me. Oh, no. Well, that's not supposed to be like that. Well, this certainly did not have timely oil changes. You can really tell by the amount of junk here, but what really caught me is that. We don't know where the rocker is. There's the top of the valve. I'm sure we'll find all of the pieces. I don't think they've escaped. I don't know. Maybe they made it all the way through the turbo and the cats. But this doesn't look great. And don't mind the leaves. That was just from the car sitting in my yard. Not my yard at home, my yard here. I don't have cars sitting in my yard at home. Now, another interesting comparison would be the way this looks versus the other N54 I tore down. It's a pretty big difference if you ask me. Next, I'm going to remove this heater hose. Now I need to talk about the oil filter housing. Since the dawn of time, BMWs have had trouble leaking oil from the oil filter housing. It's always the gasket that goes bad. And when this happens, it saturates the serpentine belt. On the older cars, it was just a massive oil leak. On the M series engine cars, just a massive oil leak. But on the N series engines, and by the way, I'm only talking about 6 cylinders here, on these engines, it saturates the serpentine belt, which then can get ingested through the crank seal. Now, a normal serpentine belt that's dry, the engine doesn't like that. But the minute you put some engine sauce on it, it's like filet mignon. That thing just sucks that belt in. It'll clog the pickup. It causes all kinds of issues. Definitely kills a lot of motors. Something you need to avoid. So if it starts leaking here, you should address it. Now, this is a very cheap and easy repair. The parts are very inexpensive, 20, 30 bucks maybe, and an oil change. And it's a lot cheaper than fishing belt material out of your pickup or replacing your engine. So now we can take this off. Since the front of this engine was drenched in oil, I'd like to take a closer look at this gasket. So they usually get pretty hard and they'll get brittle and they won't flex. And this is pretty hard. There we go. Nope, there we went. Yeah, this is just chunking off of here. Here's a closer look at what a hard, brittle oil filter housing gasket looks like. It's actually not as bad as I've seen, but it just tears and breaks. Gets flat. It loses its ability to seal, and they can actually mix coolant and oil and show symptoms of a blown head gasket, at least a visual symptom of a blown head gasket. Now we're going to strip the front of this engine, pull all these pulleys off. That's the next step. One of my favorite things to do is, instead of installing a new crank seal, you just smear a bunch of RTV over the area, because that seals it in. It's like a crank seal in a tube. This doesn't really fix anything. You can see there's still wet oil right here where they clean the block. This is a, we'll call that an improper repair. Next, we'll remove the Vano solenoid. Oh, come on. Work with me here. Well, there's no metal shavings on that one. Just some sludgy oil. They don't look terrible, but you should also replace them with new ones. I would never sell used ones. While we're here, we're going to see if my new impact will break these cam gear bolts loose. I think that's a no. Nope. We got to get air for that one, or maybe a charged battery. Oh, no air pressure. All right, now we'll use some air. All right, we're just going to let those hang out there. Next, we'll get the timing chain tensioner broken loose. That was sweet. Before we get any further, I need to remove these access plugs. This is what the timing cassette bolts to. It's actually on the inside of that. This gives us access. Actually, I've decided to give this a quick little brake clean bath. This is going to take probably 35 cans, but I'm just going to try to knock the loose stuff off. This has clearly been leaking for a while. Nope, let's go get another can. There, now we can kind of see what we're working on here. Now it's time to remove this seal and cover. This gives us access to the vacuum pump and the high pressure fuel pump. This is something you should replace with new every time, another cheap part. So I'm going to do this the easiest way I know how. Okay. Now if this doesn't work, it should have. Obviously, you can't really do that in the car that easily, so I'm taking full advantage of it being on the stand. There's also one more access right here for one of the timing rails. Now we'll loosen the chain tensioner. It's in perfect shape. Oh, that was actually pretty tight. That should be what we need here to get it all apart. One. Set that there. Two. Now we need to pull some of these rails out. This is kind of a cassette here. There we go. And it's out. Now the rails don't look too bad. They are pretty worn. Keep in mind, this car had 95,000 miles on it, which is still pretty low for one of these. But yeah, all these look just great. Unlike a lot of the engines I've torn down on this channel, these engines and other BMW engines have cam trays. They don't have cam caps. So when something goes through the oil, whether it's metal or some other debris, and it wipes out a journal and a cam, it doesn't mean the head is scrapped, because both sides of the journal, the top and the bottom, both are separate from the actual cylinder head. And that's good for two reasons. Number one is the head usually comes out unscathed no matter what happens, unless, I don't know, an exhaust valve stem appears in the exhaust port. And two, if you need to replace a cam or a tray, you don't have to pull the cylinder head. You can just replace the parts that are bad. Also, because of this design, it's not like the Toyotas where they have like a plate or a cam tower. they have no sealing surface here, so it can't leak. It can't create any extra surfaces to seal or leak. This looks pretty dingy in here. A lot of the rollers have grooves cut into them. They're not super thick or super deep, but it's definitely had some debris running through this engine. And look at the amount of sludge there. That's, oh yeah, and there's that. So there's the top there. Looks like that's all one piece now. Is the rocker okay? Not that I would reuse it. Well, let's see, is the spring broke? Spring's not broken. What happened here? It's just really dirty and dingy. That wasn't like that. Don't mind that. And the cam trays, the journals in the trays have some wear as well. You can definitely see there's been something running through the oil. Maybe it was run low, maybe it was just dirty oil, some debris. The cams, pretty healthy damage on the journals. I can definitely feel that through my gloves. So these cams are not going to be resold. The other cam isn't quite as bad, just still not good. And looking at the lobes for damage, nothing's super terrible, nothing's gouged, but still not good. Before we get into the big head bolts, we have some bolts at the front of the block and head we need to get out first. It is finally time to crack the head bolts loose. Stay. I think this should just come right off. Oh, well, that would explain a few things. Well, the first three cylinders look pretty good. This one has a few dings and dents in it. And then you've got this one, which, well, there's the head of the valve. So there's some more valve. This is all just tons of metal. This is insane here. We'll get this cleaned up here in a minute. Lots of marks here. And then back to normal, decent. A little bit of water in the rear cylinders, but that's what did it. And the cylinder head, aside from the glaring problem, isn't too bad. Obviously, this is going to take a ton of work if it's even worth fixing. I don't think it is. Look at how deep that is. It's really terrible. That valve is chipped. Obviously, I'm sure that plug just came right out. Those valves are bent. There's the piece of valve. It's supposed to go like that. There, it's fixed. And then more metal jammed into this one. It's adjacent cylinder. And these don't look too bad. We still have to do our test. It's science. That one's good, good, good. Okay. Oh, I'm just popping pieces off. I bet that's going to have some more damage than we can see right now. And those appear to be decent. While we're here, I'm going to get this off if I can. So I've got 3 Torx bolts, and then I can remove the vacuum pump with the high pressure fuel pump attached. Next, I'm going to remove the low pressure line. Now I should be able to pop this whole thing out. I could have removed it separately with these Allens or hex bolts, but it's not really worth it. Just take the whole thing out and pull it apart on the bench. While I'm in the neighborhood, I'm going to get this mount bracket out of the way. Now it's time to flip this over so we can pull the pan. That's not too bad. Probably leaked more oil when it was running. Now it's time to pop the pan off. These are aluminum bolts. I went over this in the last video. There's a lot of people that aren't a fan of that. See what's behind door number 2. Ugh. Just lots of sludge. Nothing, no pieces of anything, nothing that I can identify from another part of the engine. Just lots of dirty oil. Next thing, let's remove the pickup tube. Oh, I could have gone without that. Let's finish the job and pull the windage tray. Well, if you look in the pickup, you'll see that there's some things in there that are not supposed to reside. I'm going to try to evict them and see what they actually are. And this holds a lot. I think that's not all of it. Nope. Nope, there's another piece right there. Well, that sure looks like belt to me. It could be RTV, I suppose, but it really looks more like that's leftover serpentine belt. That's not supposed to be there. Now let's see if we can remove the oil pump gear. Alright, I think I should be able to get the oil pump past that. Now we can start removing the rods and pistons. Just like so. Uh-oh. That one is part of the crank. Let's turn it over and see if it'll leave the rod and piston at top dead center. Yeah, there we go. Unsurprisingly, the bearings don't look so good. This is what happens when you drive a oil-leaking BMW and you don't repair it correctly. Bearings definitely show signs of oil starvation / dirty oil. Now, most of the rods and pistons look pretty good. Cylinder 1 looks good. Cylinder 2, a little bit of skirt wear. Not terrible at all. Even number 3, not too bad. But number 4, not so good. There's a crack right there. Lots of deep impact marks. And there's also some damage on the sides of the crown. I'm probably going to see some bore damage when we get this engine apart the rest of the way. It's kind of unfortunate. I don't think this was a super high RPM or load related failure. I don't think that happened. I think this was closer towards idle because there's a countable number of impact marks. But it was enough to stop the engine. I think had it happened at a higher RPM or load, that the damage would have been much more severe. We would have had some external signs of it. The next thing I need to do is remove the oil returns. Hopefully these pop out pretty easily. Now it's time to remove the bed plate so we can get this crank out. Yeah, those all came out pretty nice. Oh no! My socket's too thick for those. Alright, now this should just, come right off, I think. Yeah, it actually will. Now we can get this off. The main bearings don't look nearly as bad as the rod bearings. I don't see anything too terrible with them. However, look at the seal mating surface for that crank seal. Someone's been in there doing some less than ideal work. It is pretty chewed up. And the same could be said for the bed plate. Now these bearings don't look quite as nice. That one's still on the crank. We'll get that off in a minute. These bearings don't look quite as nice, especially that one there. I think the word I'm looking for is suboptimal. You guys taught me that. Well, there's a reason I'm starting at the back. You can see the journals definitely have some damage that mirrors the damage on the bearings. Like some debris has run through the oiling system. It's not terrible. It might be able to be saved. However, there's still a main bearing here, and it doesn't look good. And then the snout, oof. That is hard to blame BMW for that one. After looking at the damage on the snout of the crank, I think it's clear that the debris we found inside the pickup was actually sealant from when they installed the crank seal. They just glopped a whole bunch of RTV in there, hoping it would fix this. However, I think it still leaked. Let's take a look at these bores. Cylinder 1, some pretty bad vertical scratching. It's mirrored in cylinder 2 and 3, but this is what I'm most interested in. That is bad. And that's worse. Yep, that's worse. There's like a little ding, couple dings, several dings. That's going to require some machine work to be fixed, and it may not be worth it. Nice blocks do sell, but damaged blocks, they're not that uncommon to find these engines that people are building them out of ones that have damage. It's pretty hard to say why that valve was broken. Was that the symptom, or was that caused by something else? Did it ingest something? The craftsmanship of the repairs on this engine leave a lot to be desired, and I've seen this on several of these type of vehicles. They are expensive to repair. Labor costs are expensive. Parts are expensive. And a lot of people do it themselves. There's some fantastic write-ups on what to do and what not to do. And if you're going to do anything, watch the ones of what not to do. This, however, this specific case, how does an engine that destroys itself in one cylinder set the back of the car on fire? How does that happen? I can't connect the dots. Engine failure, trunk fire. Engine failure, unless no one would ever just set their car on fire to get out of repairing it. That would never happen. That would never happen. But just in case you guys are curious, since I own the vehicle this came from, here's the VIN number. I don't know what you can do with it. I don't expect any results. I don't care. But, you know, you guys like that kind of thing. So if you'd like to buy parts off of this engine, there are some that survived. Or if you need other N54s, I probably have 4 or 5 in stock at any time. I have 335 ISs. I have 135s with 36,000 miles on them. I have 535s. Whatever you guys need N54 related, I usually have it. Index 12 injectors. I could keep going. Or if you'd like to buy parts off of SC430s, I think I have 6 of these on the lot now. Various stages of flood. This is not actually a flood car, but they still wrote a certificate of destruction on it. And it's not really worth going through all the hassle to try to get this thing legal again and then trying to sell it to someone claiming that there's no actual damage. Either way, it's a great parts car. These cars part out really well. So if you need parts for a BMW or anything else, SC430, you can go to importapart.com. If you don't see what you're looking for, you can shoot us an email or fill out our part request form, which sends us an email of exactly what it is you're looking for. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.